At 6 p.m. near Mala Tokmachka, in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region, Russian assault troops did not roll forward behind tanks. They came on motorcycles, ATVs, and small off-road vehicles, engines screaming across open ground where drones, mines, artillery, and rifle fire were already waiting. It looks strange, almost reckless. But on this battlefield, strange tactics often reveal hard military truths. Why would a major army send men toward a fortified village with almost no armor around them? Was this desperation, innovation, or both? This attack became more than a local clash. It showed how the war in Ukraine is changing in real time. Before we break it down, subscribe to Military Force for sharp, serious battlefield analysis. To understand why this scene mattered, we first need to look at how Russia launched the assault. Mala Tokmachka may look like a small village on a map, but in the Zaporizhzhia region, small places can decide the shape of a much larger fight. This part of southern Ukraine has become one of the most dangerous battle zones in the war, because every road, field, tree line, and dirt track can be watched, mined, or targeted. In a normal war story, viewers might expect Russian troops to move forward behind tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, or armored personnel carriers. That is not what happened here. Near Mala Tokmachka, Russian forces opened an attack with light mobile units, using motorcycles, ATVs, and buggy-type vehicles instead of a classic armored column. It was a strange sight, but it was not meaningless. It showed how both sides are now fighting in a battlefield where heavy armor can be powerful, but also painfully visible. According to Ukraine's 118th Separate Mechanized Brigade, the Russian assault involved more than 30 motorcycles and several ATVs moving toward the area along 3 different routes. That detail is important because it suggests this was not a loose or random ride across open ground. It looked like an attempt to split Ukrainian attention and push several small groups forward at the same time. Instead of giving Ukrainian defenders one large target, Russian commanders appeared to create several fast-moving streams. One group could draw fire, another could try to slip through, and a third could search for a weak point. This is the cold logic behind the operation. If the attack force could cross the exposed zone quickly enough, it might reach the Ukrainian defensive line before drones, artillery, and infantry weapons could fully respond. The choice of vehicles tells us a lot about the pressure Russia is facing on this front. A tank can carry armor and firepower, but it is also large, loud, and easier to track from above. An infantry fighting vehicle can move troops under protection, yet it can still be stopped by mines, hit by FPV drones, or struck by artillery once its route is known. In Ukraine, the sky has become one of the most dangerous parts of the battlefield. Reconnaissance drones can spot movement, attack drones can chase vehicles, and artillery crews can adjust fire with far greater speed than in older wars. For Russian commanders, motorcycles and ATVs offer a different option. They are cheaper, faster, smaller, and easier to spread out across different paths. If one vehicle is hit, the rest of the group may still keep moving. But this advantage comes with a brutal weakness. A motorcycle does not protect the man riding it. There is no armor plate, no shielded cabin, and no heavy body to absorb blast fragments. The rider is exposed to bullets, shrapnel, drone explosions, mines, rough ground, and even a sudden crash. On paper, speed becomes the main protection. In real combat, that protection lasts only as long as the vehicle keeps moving and the defender is slow to react. Once the route is spotted, once artillery begins to land, or once an FPV drone locks on, the rider has very little room for error. A soldier inside a tank may still have a chance after a near miss. A man on a motorcycle has almost none. This is why the attack near Mala Tokmachka should be understood with seriousness, not mockery. The Russian soldiers were not simply sent forward in a strange formation for no reason. They were part of a harsh battlefield calculation. When armored vehicles become expensive to lose and infantry on foot moves too slowly through open terrain, commanders start looking for another way to cross the most dangerous ground. Motorcycles, ATVs and buggies become a tool for speed, surprise, and dispersion. Yet they also reveal something darker about the war. Russia is trying to solve a modern problem with lighter, cheaper, and more exposed machines, while Ukraine's defenses are built to punish movement before it reaches the front line. So the assault was designed around speed, but speed alone cannot guarantee survival in a battlefield watched from the sky. And Russia did not send these vehicles forward completely unchanged. Some of them carried battlefield modifications meant to answer the two biggest threats ahead: mines and drones. The strange part of this assault was not only that Russian troops used motorcycles, but that some of those vehicles were reportedly modified for a battlefield filled with mines and drones. At first glance, the story may sound like Russian soldiers were simply riding forward with shovels in their hands. But the more accurate point is different. According to Ukrainian reports, some motorcycles appeared to have front-mounted devices, similar to shovel-like or plow-like tools, meant to deal with mines or clear a small path through dangerous ground. That detail matters because this was not just a wild charge for the camera. It was a rough battlefield experiment, and it showed how much the war has changed. These modifications suggest that Russian units were trying to turn very light vehicles into tools for a much harder mission. Some motorcycles and ATVs were reportedly fitted with mine-clearing attachments, while others carried mobile electronic warfare systems designed to reduce the threat from Ukrainian UAVs. In simple terms, Russia was trying to answer two problems at once. Mines could stop the assault before it even reached the Ukrainian line, and drones could hunt the riders while they moved through the open. So the Russian force tried to combine speed, small size, basic engineering tools, and electronic protection in one fast-moving package. The mine problem is one of the main reasons this war has become so slow and costly. A minefield does not need to destroy every vehicle to shape a battle. It only needs to force attackers into narrow routes, make them slow down, and push them into places where defenders are already waiting. Once a unit is trapped in a predictable path, artillery, FPV drones, and machine guns become far more dangerous. A small vehicle with a crude mine-clearing device may be an attempt to test the ground, disturb hidden explosives, or create a narrow lane for riders behind it. It is not the same as a proper armored engineering vehicle, but it shows the pressure Russian troops face when every road and field may hide explosives. The drone problem is even more difficult because UAVs have changed the way soldiers move near the front. Ukrainian drones can watch approach routes, follow vehicles, guide artillery, and strike individual targets with small explosive charges. That is why mobile electronic warfare systems matter. A jammer may try to break the control link between an FPV drone and its operator, confuse navigation signals, or shorten the time a drone has to attack. On paper, that could give a motorcycle group a few extra seconds to reach cover, cross a road, or move past a dangerous open field. In this kind of war, a few seconds can mean the difference between reaching a tree line and being hit in the middle of exposed terrain. But these battlefield upgrades did not remove the basic weakness of the vehicles. A jammer does not make a rider invisible, and a mine-clearing attachment does not turn a motorcycle into an armored carrier. Ukrainian forces can still see movement through reconnaissance drones, thermal devices, ground observers, and direct line of sight. They can still strike road junctions, field edges, and likely routes of advance. If the attack is detected early, the defender does not need to chase every vehicle at the last second. He can prepare the kill zone, wait for the riders to enter it, and then use the right weapon at the right moment. This is the deeper military lesson from Mala Tokmachka. Russia is not simply repeating old Soviet-style armored assaults. It is improvising under pressure because the normal tools of mechanized warfare are now extremely costly in a drone-saturated battlespace. Instead of sending only heavy vehicles forward, Russian units are trying to mix small machines, electronic systems, and fast movement. That shows adaptation, but it also shows strain. A confident army uses armor to protect infantry. A pressured army may ask infantry to move faster because protection is no longer easy to provide. Politically, the image is even sharper. Moscow still wants to project strength, endurance, and battlefield control, Yet scenes like this reveal a different reality near the front. Russian commanders are searching for ways through Ukrainian defenses, even if that means asking soldiers to ride exposed vehicles across mined and monitored ground. The motorcycles carried tools meant to fight mines and drones, but the men riding them still had almost no physical shield around their bodies. And according to Ukraine, that lack of protection became fatal once the assault was detected. Ukraine said the Russian assault near Mala Tokmachka was detected early, and that was the moment the whole operation began to turn against the attackers. A fast attack only works when it shocks the defender, breaks his timing, or reaches the target before he can organize a response. But once Ukrainian units saw the movement on the approaches to the village, the Russian advantage of speed started to weaken. The motorcycles and ATVs were still moving quickly, but they were no longer invisible. In a drone-watched battlefield, being seen first can be just as dangerous as being hit first. The Ukrainian response likely began with simple battlefield observation, then quickly became a coordinated defense. First came detection, as reconnaissance drones, forward observers, and nearby units identified movement along the approach routes. Then came tracking, because once the Russian vehicles were in motion, Ukrainian defenders could follow their direction and judge where they were trying to break through. After that came the most important step, assigning the right weapons to the right targets. This sequence matters because modern defense is not only about firepower, it is about seeing the attack early enough to shape the fight before the enemy reaches the line. According to Ukraine's 118th Separate Mechanized Brigade, Ukrainian defenders worked with attached forces and used FPV drones, artillery, and infantry fire to strike the Russian assault group before it could enter Mala Tokmachka. This is the core of the battle. The Russian plan depended on speed, while the Ukrainian answer depended on coordination. One side tried to cross the kill zone quickly. The other side tried to turn that same path into a controlled trap. When several weapon systems work together, even a fast-moving force can lose its momentum in minutes. FPV drones played a key role because they are especially dangerous against light vehicles. For viewers who may not follow every military detail, an FPV drone is a small attack drone often guided in real time by an operator wearing video goggles or watching a live feed. Against a tank, the operator may need to hit a weak point, such as the top, rear, or exposed equipment. Against a motorcycle, the problem is much easier. There is no thick armor, no protected cabin, and no heavy body to absorb the blast. A small explosive charge can destroy the vehicle, throw the rider, or stop the assault in the open. Artillery added another layer to the defense because it did not need to chase every single motorcycle. Shells could be directed toward approach roads, field edges, tree lines, junctions, and places where the riders were forced to slow down. That is why terrain matters so much in this kind of fight. If mines, rough ground, or narrow tracks push attackers into a limited number of routes, artillery becomes more effective. It can break the rhythm of the assault, separate groups from each other, and make it harder for surviving riders to continue toward the objective. Infantry fire became the final danger for any Russian soldiers who reached closer ground or tried to dismount. At that range, Ukrainian troops could use rifles, machine guns, grenade launchers, and other direct fire weapons from covered positions. This is where the battle becomes personal and brutal. A motorcycle can help a soldier cross open terrain faster than walking, but it can also carry him directly into the sights of waiting defenders. If he has to stop, fall, or leave the vehicle under fire, the speed that protected him a few moments earlier is gone. This is why the Ukrainian defense should be understood as a kill chain, not a single dramatic strike. Drones saw the movement. Commanders and units judged the threat. Artillery disrupted the routes. FPV drones hunted fragile vehicles. Infantry fire punished anyone who came too close. Each layer made the next one more effective, and together they turned a mobile assault into a failing operation. The lesson is clear. In this war, defense is no longer just a trench, a gun, or a minefield. It is a network of eyes, signals, weapons, and trained soldiers acting before the attacker can finish his move. The result was not just a damaged assault group. According to Ukraine, the Russian force failed to reach its objective at all. According to the Ukrainian side, the Russian assault near Mala Tokmachka ended with heavy reported losses before the attackers could reach their goal. Ukraine said around 26 Russian assault troops were taken out of action, more than 10 others were wounded, more than 20 motorcycles were destroyed, and around 10 ATVs were burned, disabled, or abandoned on the battlefield. These numbers come from Ukrainian forces, so they should be treated as wartime claims rather than fully independent figures. But even with that caution, the scale of the reported damage tells us something important. This was not a small patrol that ran into trouble. It was a planned push that lost men and vehicles on the way in. Ukraine also said Russian troops failed to enter Mala Tokmachka, and the fighting ended after only several hours. That detail is more important than the vehicle count alone. The point of the assault was not just to move fast or test Ukrainian fire. The purpose was to break through the approach zone, get close to the village, and challenge the defensive line around it. Instead, the Russian force was stopped before it could complete that mission. In military terms, this means the attack did not only suffer losses, it failed at the task it was built to achieve. The loss of motorcycles and ATVs must be understood differently from the loss of tanks or infantry fighting vehicles. A tank is expensive, hard to replace, and politically visible when destroyed. An armored vehicle also carries weapons, protection, radios, and crew training that matter at the unit level. A motorcycle is much cheaper, and an ATV can be replaced more easily than a tracked combat vehicle. From a Russian command view, that may be part of the reason these platforms are being used. If heavy armor is too easy to spot and too costly to lose, lighter machines may look like a safer bet on paper. But the human cost changes the whole calculation. The soldiers riding those vehicles are not disposable parts of a machine. Assault troops need training, discipline, and battlefield sense, especially in a war where drones can appear above them at any moment. They must know how to move under fire, react to explosions, follow orders under pressure, and keep formation even when the route turns dangerous. A damaged motorcycle can be replaced in a warehouse or repaired behind the lines. A trained fighter who survives months in this type of combat is much harder to rebuild. The wounded also matter because casualty evacuation has become one of the hardest problems in this war. Ukrainian reports suggested that more than 10 Russian troops were injured, and some were not evacuated quickly. If true, this could point to confusion after the failed attack, continued Ukrainian fire on the approach routes, or a lack of safe vehicles to recover them. It may also show the cruel effect of drone surveillance. Once a path is watched, even a rescue attempt can become another target. A battlefield that is dangerous for an assault can be just as deadly for the men sent to pull survivors out. There is also a political side to this result. Russian narratives have often tried to show contested areas as stable, controlled, or already decided. But the need to launch an assault toward Mala Tokmachka tells a different story. A name on a map can look simple in a briefing room, but the ground itself may tell another truth. Around a village like this, mines, drones, artillery, and infantry positions can turn a few kilometers into a wall. That is why frontline reality often breaks the clean language of official propaganda. Control is not a slogan. It must be proven on the ground, and here, according to Ukraine, Russia could not prove it. The most striking image is not only the burned vehicles left behind, it is the failed promise of speed. Russian commanders tried to send a light mobile force through the danger zone before Ukrainian defenses could fully react. But by the time the attack unfolded, that zone had already adapted. The routes were watched, the fire was coordinated, and the fast vehicles became fragile targets. The assault near Mala Tokmachka showed that speed can reduce exposure, but it cannot erase danger once the defender is ready. And this was not the only place where Ukrainian troops were seeing Russian motorcycles on the battlefield. The motorcycle assault near Mala Tokmachka was not an isolated battlefield surprise, because Ukrainian commanders are seeing the same pattern in other sectors. At the Pokrovsk front, Ukraine's Air Assault Forces commander, Ole Apostol, said Ukrainian soldiers are increasingly facing Russian troops moving on motorcycles. According to his remarks, these groups are being hit with FPV drones, loitering munitions, and in some cases, even automatic rifle fire at close range. That detail matters because it shows the tactic is no longer limited to one village in Zaporizhzhia. It is becoming part of a wider Russian effort to move men through areas where traditional armored vehicles are too exposed. Pokrovsk matters because it has been one of the hardest-fought sectors of the war. If Russian motorcycle groups are appearing there as well, then this is not just a local experiment by one unit. It suggests Russian forces are testing or adopting light mobile assaults across different parts of the front. The reason is clear enough. Tanks and infantry fighting vehicles still have power, but they are large targets in a battlefield filled with drones, mines, and artillery. Motorcycles, ATVs, and buggies give Russian units another way to push small groups forward with speed, lower cost, and less dependence on heavy armor. But the close-range rifle detail reveals the terrifying weakness inside this method. A Russian rider may begin the attack trying to outrun drones and artillery across open ground. If he survives that first danger, he may reach terrain close enough for Ukrainian soldiers to engage him from cover with rifles or machine guns. That creates a brutal paradox. The vehicle helps him close the distance faster, but closing that distance may deliver him into another killing zone. In other words, speed can solve one problem while creating the next. Ukraine is also adapting with every attack it sees. The more often Russian forces use motorcycles, the more Ukrainian units can study their routes, timing, spacing, dismount points, and electronic warfare behavior. A tactic that shocks defenders once may become easier to predict if it is repeated too often. Still, the Russian approach is not meaningless. Light vehicles can move quickly, spread out, and complicate targeting when many appear at once. In some terrain, they may help small teams reach forward positions faster than infantry on foot. The problem is that success depends on surprise, timing, concealment, and gaps in the defense. When Ukrainian units are ready, the same speed that gives motorcycles value can make them visible targets. That is why the assault near Mala Tokmachka matters far beyond one village in Zaporizhzhia. The assault near Mala Tokmachka shows a wider Russian trend, but it also exposes a growing Russian problem. Moscow is using motorcycles, ATVs, and buggies to move faster, save armored vehicles, and search for gaps inside Ukraine's dense UAV network. Yet the same advantage is now becoming a weakness. These vehicles can cross open ground quickly, but they cannot protect soldiers once Ukrainian drones, artillery, infantry fire, and electronic warfare begin working together. Russia is adapting because traditional armor has become costly, while Ukraine is adapting by turning the battlefield into a connected defensive system. Mala Tokmachka proved that speed may help troops reach the danger zone, but it cannot replace armor, concealment, coordination, or protection. In this drone war, survival belongs to the side that can see, jam, strike, and move smarter. Subscribe to Military Force for more sharp battlefield analysis.